Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome back to our channel once again. And it is my hope and prayer that the video is going to find you guys in good health. Personally, I am fine, as you can see. Kisumu is fantastic, and maybe you could also let me know where you're watching the video from, the county or the country, in case you are out of the republic. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2027 presidential elections in the Republic of Kenya is going to be the most expensive election in the history of the Republic of Kenya. And apart from being the most expensive election in the history, it's definitely going to be one of the bitterly contested elections in the Republic of Kenya. It's actually going to be dirty. And 2027, just like Rigathi Gachagua predicted, is going to look like Christmas party if Kenyans are not careful.
This country will not be destroyed by a few people who are impatient and who want to have a change of government using unconstitutional means. It is not going to happen. And I want to tell them it is not going to happen. Sijui kama tunaelewana? Tumeelewana? Yes. Na kama walikuwa wanafikiria ile walikuwa wanafikiria, wafikirie tena. Because mimi nimenyamaza, mimi nimewavumilia, lakini mahali imefika. Enough is enough. I want to say that for the avoidance of any doubt. Sijui kama...
And it is also fresh in this mind of the ICC ordeal still hanging on the neck of William Ruto today. Remind William Ruto that his ICC cases are not yet over. They have been paused after witnesses disappeared. And what he is pretending over are crimes under the Rome Statute. It is clear history is repeating itself. And the architect William Ruto is back on the deck. He is hell-bent to finish his unfinished business with the people of Mount Kenya. Destroy their businesses and make them black sheep of Kenya.
But I've also been thinking about something. I don't know about you. That if you were to go to the elections today, and William Ruto is defeated, do you think he will agree to hand over power to the winner?
And if there is no country for William Ruto, there is no country for you. You know? So no. So let's.
And I've also been thinking that if William Ruto were to win in a free and fair contest today, do you think the opposition will accept that they have been defeated? Which means we are in a very difficult situation as a country. And I want to compare it to 2007. In 2007, Raila Odinga clearly won the elections. But Raila Odinga was never declared the president of the Republic of Kenya. Mwai Kibaki swore himself at night. And Raila Odinga ended up being part of that government. And that's why sometimes when I sit back and reflect on what Moses Kuria said the other day, that Kenya will not have elections in 2027, I tend to think that it could be true that we might not have an election in 2027. But assuming we are going to have an election in 2027, which formation do you think is likely to win? I'm projecting the following formations. William Ruto paired by Kindiki or someone else from the Luhya Nation. I'm also looking at Rigathi Gachagua on the ballot paired by George Natembeya. That's a very lethal formation. And I'm also looking at another formation which is going to form the basis of this analysis. Kalonzo Musyoka and Fred Okengo Matiang'i. Do you think Fred Matiang'i and Kalonzo Musyoka can defeat William Ruto in 2027? That's exactly what I want us to analyze deeply in this video. Before we do that, for those who are watching this channel for the first time, please take a second or two, click that subscribe button so that next time we produce a video like this, YouTube will automatically notify you. And to the subscribers, I want to continue thanking you guys for your continued support. Because without that support, this channel cannot be where it is. Ladies and gentlemen, assuming tomorrow is an election day, and you wake up, and you are provided with two ballot papers, and you are provided with a ballot paper. And in that ballot paper, there are two presidential candidates and their running mates. William Ruto, of course, is a presidential candidate defending, paired by Kindiki. And then there is either Kalonzo as a presidential candidate with Matiang'i as a running mate, or Matiang'i as a presidential candidate with Kalonzo as a running mate. Which formation would you vote for? I want us to figure out who is likely to win from your answer. So I want to read your answer. Which formation do you think is likely to win? Just say Kalonzo Matiang'i or Ruto Kindiki in the comment sections. In the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, just like I was trying to explain to you guys, that 2027 presidential elections in the Republic of Kenya is going to be the most expensive and it's going to be bitterly contested. The stakes are just too high for both political camps. But can Kalonzo Musyoka and Fred Matiang'i succeed in defeating William Ruto? I want to make an assumption that the opposition shall have agreed on that ticket. And therefore they are going to be supported by Rigathi and Natembeya, Eugene Wamalwa and the rest. On the other side, William Ruto is going to be supported by Raila Odinga. Can the ticket of Kalonzo and Matiang'i win? For me, it's going to be very difficult, because the question which we've always asked on this platform and elsewhere, and everybody is asking it, that William Ruto is very unpopular. But who can remove him? He can only be removed through a united opposition. But is united opposition enough to remove Ruto? For this team to remove Ruto, they need the following. Number one is voter turnout. They must work on voter turnout, especially in their strongholds. And this is where the problem is. Let's assume that they are going to agree that the candidate is Kalonzo or the candidate is Matiang'i. If the candidate is Matiang'i, will the Kamba nation wake up very early in the morning to vote for Matiang'i? And if the presidential candidate is Kalonzo, will the Kisii nation wake up very early to vote for Kalonzo? Because for the mountain, I'm persuaded that the mountain will wake up very early in the morning, not for any other thing, but to try and punish William Ruto. But I also know that the government is working on a strategy of voter suppression in the mountain. You never know what the government will come up with. Maybe the people will later on not see the need of waking up to go and vote. So for this camp to win, the Kamba nation and the Kisii nation must wake up, all of them, very early and vote for their candidates. But if there's going to be voter apathy because maybe Matiang'i is not picked or Kalonzo is not picked, it's going to be very difficult to remove Ruto by virtue of being a sitting president. So the first thing they must work on is voter turnout. I don't know the strategy they're going to work on, but voter turnout. And that voter turnout is not only on the voting day, the registration process of IBC, which is about to open. So that's number one. Number two, there's the rage against William Ruto as we speak today. The other day there was Nairobi Marathon, and the song was Ruto Must Go. Then there were those young people who went to Malindi, and they were stopped at SGR when they were coming back. Their songs were about Ruto Must Go. So it means William Ruto is very unpopular. We don't deny that. But William Ruto comes from the Kalenjin nation. They want to protect that seat. Raila Odinga would try to help him. So the only thing which will help this team is if they can sustain that rage, which means that rage should be able to cut across, not confined to these urban centers only. They must ensure that the rage is felt deep in the villages, that the rage against Ruto can be felt deep in Siaya, it can be felt deep in Maraboi, it can be felt deep in Kitui. So if they can sustain that rage, it will mean that even if William Ruto were to do anything, even good things, Kenyans will not be able to see. But if they will fail to sustain that rage against Ruto, Ruto can change it to his advantage as we speak. Because, for example, one of the biggest challenges William Ruto is facing, in my view, is communication. I listened to William Ruto today and I was like, what are these? You can't attack youths. You can't claim that these people never disturbed Kibaki when Kibaki was the president, or Uhuru. The truth is, they gave you their votes. Why? Because you convinced them that their problems began with Uhuru and Raila at that time. And therefore, they looked up to you as the solution provider. And now you failed. And that's why they're making noise. For example, Kibaki never made those promises. Uhuru never made some of those promises. Uhuru was voted in because the mountain wanted to save him from the jaws of ICC. They never expected anything from Uhuru. For Ruto, he promised. He made these promises. So the Kenyan youth are very angry with him because he made those promises. So I tend to think that Ruto is facing serious communications challenges in his government. But as long as that rage can be sustained, one term. Number 3 is proper communications strategy. Fred Matiang'i came back into the country. I want to ask you some honest question. What is his plan since he came back? What has he done since he came back? Can you point out? Apart from the rally in, was it in Western Kenya? Kalonzo has been here. What is his agenda? What is he running away with? Which means their communications is dead. Why is Rigathi Gachagua shining? Rigathi Gachagua is shining because he's able to communicate. Like today, Rigathi Gachagua has addressed the nation on specific issues. He's been attacking William Ruto, and that's what most Kenyans want to hear. So which means for Rigathi Gachagua, he has his communication strategy. You might agree with it or you might disagree with it, but it's there. For the rest, they are not there. So which means if Matiang'i and Kalonzo were to be paired, they will have to invest in a proper communication strategy, because if they won't, they should forget. Number 4, and this is the most important one, vote protection strategy. I've participated in politics, and I want to be honest. One of the things Raila Odinga has invested heavily in his political career is networks. You go to a rally with Raila Odinga in a village in Kathwana, in Tharaka Nithi, because I went there. Ahead of his arrival, you'll meet a mzee there who will tell you stories about Raila Odinga. You know, how they used to work. You know, they have that history. To an extent that even if that mzee will not be able to get audience to sit on the high table, he will just stand on the crowd like this. When Raila will be speaking and will spot him, you will see Raila calling him by name. I'm not so sure whether Kalonzo has invested in grassroots network, because there's no way you can protect your votes without grassroots networks. Ruto did the same in the last election. Ruto had hustlers all over. Even you who voted for him and now don't want him, you know Ruto had networks, grassroots networks. And that's something which this team is lacking. So for Matiang'i and Kalonzo to win, they must first of all begin by creating networks, proper networks on the ground. That network will be easily converted into vote protection. The reason Raila Odinga was never declared the president of the Republic of Kenya is because he did not protect his votes. He had assumed that he had the deep state, and therefore the deep state was going to use the chiefs and the assistant chiefs and their local networks to protect the vote. It doesn't work like that. You must have people who believes in you. If, for example, Raila Odinga had used the ODM networks, because ODM is structured such that it begins at the polling station. There are 20 officials of ODM. Are they 20? 2020, 48. Are they 48? 2020, 18. That's 58. At any polling station around there are 58 ODM officials. Even if you are to buy some, there are some of those loyal ones. If Raila had used that network, he would have won. But he was convinced not to use that by the deep state, because William Ruto had managed to infiltrate that Raila Odinga strategy team. And lastly, these guys must be ready. They must be ready to spend money. If Kalonzo does not have money, he should forget about running for the presidency. If Matiang'i does not have money, he should forget about running for the presidency. Because the only people who will vote for a candidate without the need for money, I'm convinced, are the Gen-Zs. And for the Gen-Zs, you'll have to persuade them. They might even decide to pick one of their own and vote for that candidate. So which means for this team to counter William Ruto, for them to move from point A to point B to point C, they must have ready choppers, they must have vehicles, they must have public address system across. All those will require money. Even proper communication will require money. I remember in 2013 or 2017, Uhuru Kenyatta hired Cambridge Analytica. That Cambridge Analytica, their work was simple: to convince the mountain that Raila Odinga was a devil. And that's why they voted emotionally against Raila. In fact, I'm also convinced that William Ruto used the same trick. That William Ruto used the same trick in the last election. He hired, I think, some communications team, mostly from outside, which convinced the Kikuyu nation that Uhuru was bad, Raila was bad, and he was the only person who could save them. This team, for them to win, they must have finance to finance anything they need, including even buying people. Because I doubt if they'll be able to compete against William Ruto without resources, because William Ruto has already made the money for campaign, the taxes, and a lot of things. I don't know what to think. Until next time, this is Makwiny. Bye-bye.